Hey, and welcome to episode 7 of Puckin Dirty. My name is David DeJoya, and I'm the host of this pod, and I'm happy to have another chance here to bring you my thoughts and considerations on Penguins, hockey, and everything, under the sun for hockey. We're a hockey podcast here, primarily covering Penguins, Florida Panthers, and, any kind of hockey pop culture out there. If that interests you, then you should definitely check out our socials at Dirty J Hockey on Instagram and Twitter. We post there quite frequently and been trying to engage more with the community there and really started to try to, get other people involved with the pod and, get our name out there just for fun, really. Nothing too serious here. And my last week, it wasn't that bad. Started really getting into miniatures. Another hobby of mine is Dungeons and Dragons. And, you play on like a tabletop and you have like pieces, like figures and stuff. And, oh, there goes my dog. And I started getting more into that side of things. I've already painted them, and, me and my girlfriend Kai, we kind of, do that as like a kind of a side hobby. But recently I got a magnetic board and I started gluing on magnets to them. So I started getting a little bit more into the minifigs, and we actually have an account or Instagram account called Traveling Tavern Tales for the D&D stuff. So that was pretty fun. And another thing that, Dungeons & Dragons related, while I'm on the topic here, is my girlfriend got me one of these advent calendars. Oh God, don't be loud. And I'm showing it on the video, and it's a dice advent calendar. And I just, I started thinking, what could I do with dice and hockey that's interesting to start the pod here? And one of the things that other things I do is collect hockey cards. And if you're, watching the video, watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the cards I can show you. But I have my binder here, and I was thinking I'm just going to roll 2 dice, and let's just see what card we land on, and maybe we can discuss that player a little bit before we start on the pod here. So I'm rolling some new dice from the pretty cool. They're a D10 and a D12. They're both pretty cool. Excited to use them. I got to use them yesterday when I played D&D, but let's see what I get here. So I'm going to go to page 9, and I'm going to go to the second one. AMSR. 6. Geez. 7, 8, 9. And the second card is Anders Lee. Anders Lee is a left wing for the Islanders. I think he's actually the captain now as of, I think, maybe a year or two ago. He was injured last year, tore his ACL. This year, I'm pretty sure he's not off to a bad start. I'm actually gonna look him up because I honestly don't know. But yeah, he's definitely a good player for the Islanders. Last year he had a 20-goal campaign. It was kind of his plateau there. He's definitely good on the power play and can find the back of the net. He's an American-born player, so you always like to see Americans succeed. And he was actually on the Spitting Chicklets podcast in like their, I think it's called a sandbagger when they play golf with these guys. And apparently he plays golf drives with one hand and then putts left-handed or something like that. It's kind of odd, actually. And his current stats in the NHL right now: 26 games played, 8 goals, 12 assists, 20 points. So yeah, he's off to another pretty good year, pretty good start for the Islanders, who in themselves are off to a good start here. Give me 1 second as I put away my cards here. But I think I'm gonna start doing that. Trying to get off the cusp, kind of hockey talk if I can from the cards. I think they're definitely pretty interesting collection, and I know everyone collects something out there. I collect Dungeons and Dragons stuff and hockey cards, so pretty interesting. Interesting, I know. So just to move on to the hockey stuff here, I got a few headlines here that I'd like to discuss. Is first off, Mitch Marner has set a franchise record with the Leafs. He has a 19-game point streak, which is the longest in their history. I like Mitch Marner. I think he's a great player. I feel like he gets an undue amount of disrespect in Toronto. They criticize him for not scoring in the playoffs. Fair criticism, but the team has not looked good in the playoffs in general. I mean, Austin Matthews kind of shrunk away last year, and I think Mitch is a great player. He's always 100 points, honestly, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't hit 100 points again this year. Second note here is Jason Robertson, who is putting up Connor McDavid-like numbers. 18-game point streak. He has 21 goals, 13 assists during that point streak. That's 21 goals, 13 assists. Like, that's crazy. To be over a goal a game in the NHL nowadays is unheard of. Like, Austin Matthews put up 60 goals last year, and like everyone was like, "Holy crap!" Like that's amazing. And right now, if Robertson stays on his pace, he's probably hitting 70 goals. So that'd be a crazy pace, but definitely a huge threat. And actually, the Penguins play the Dallas Stars this week, and I have a little preview on that. And he's definitely the focal point of their offense, but he's not the only offense. He's well supported in his cast, for sure. Steven Stamkos is the first player in Lightning history to record 1,000 points at the club. Not surprised there at all. He's, despite like St. Louis and Lecavalier, I don't think they played as long as Stamkos has. Stamkos has been in the league since he was like 18 years old. And they both, Lecavalier and St. Louis, kind of were forced out in Tampa. Lecavalier went to like the Flyers for a year, and he didn't even really play because he was like injured. And Marty St. Louis, he went to the Rangers, and I remember in 2014 when they like bounced us. I remember St. Louis on the Rangers. He was good there, and why I remember that in particular is because I went with my buddy Eric Dunkel. He took me to a game, and it was like the day before Marty St. Louis' mom died, and there was some douchebag in the stands making fun of that. And like honestly, that I feel like that mojo kind of like put us at a loss. Like that putting that out there in the universe, you're just asking to get punched in the mouth. And Penguins did that. That was a series where I think they were up 3-1 and couldn't finish it out and lost in 7, and definitely due in part to St. Louis. But getting off topic there. But next piece of news is the Bruins. Although their streak ended at 14 with a shootout loss to the Golden Knights last night, which kind of pissed me off. I'm not gonna lie, because the Bruins came back and they looked. I thought they were going to win again, and to be honest, I like when hockey records are set and broken. But they have the most wins at home to start the season with 14, and that's pretty crazy. In a row, 14 games at all. Any kind of streak of 14 wins is unheard of in the NHL. You don't see it very often, but the Bruins, I don't know what it is this year. They're just gelling. Like their goaltending's excellent. Their scoring's excellent. Pasternak's trying to play himself into a $12 million contract. And Ullmark, I mean, this guy's been bounced around a few times. He was on Buffalo at some point. I'm not sure where he was before then, but he's been around, and he is playing beyond my expectations for him. Swayman isn't even, and shouldn't really even have, like, sniff the net. He should really, Ullmark should really be playing almost every other game or every game, you know. Next piece of news, Patrick Kane is the third active player to reach 1,200 points in the NHL. I'll give you a second to guess who the other two might be. If you answered Sidney Crosby and Alexander Ovechkin, you are correct. Those are the only other two active players that have reached this milestone. And with Stamkos just reaching it, or the 1,000-point threshold, I'm pretty sure that Malkin's near there too. So those two players, I'd be on the lookout. I'm trying to think of anyone else that maybe Claude Giroux, but I don't even know if he's hit 1,000 points yet. But yeah, a great plateau for one of the best, if not the best, American player in Patrick Kane. Gotta wash it down with some Turner's tea here. Yinzer staple. We're a real Yinzer podcast here. I got the Sidney Crosby jersey on. I'm drinking Turner's tea out of a Penguin cup. We're going full Yinzer here. We need to get the good mojo. The Pens actually play in 30 minutes, so I might even be reacting to some of that game. Hopefully I get to the previews before that. But another crazy little thing in the last week, the Kraken and the Kings combined for a total of 17 goals in a game. And I kind of posted about this on the Instagram, and Cal Peterson was sent down to the minors after this game, and he has a $3 million or a 3-year, $5 million per year deal, so $15 million total. And he already got some of the signing bonuses, so he's due. They paid more money already with how signing bonuses work in the NHL. But yeah, no one was going to touch that deal after he got sent to the minors. I really wonder what they're going to do here, because Jonathan Quick is by no means the guy anymore. He's not the guy that won them those 2 cups. He's getting old. I mean, he's still good, don't get me wrong, but he's just had a bad few years, and I think Copley is their backup now, and it's like, who the hell is this guy? Like, why? I don't know. I don't even know if they save any money by sending Cal Peterson down with how one-way contracts work in the NHL. So it's just definitely odd to move this guy down. I feel like you shouldn't give up on a guy that quick if you're paying him that type of money. And to be fair, the Kings are super inconsistent. They're constantly winning a game, losing a game, winning a game, losing a game. So I wouldn't necessarily put all blame on the goaltender, but the team definitely in front of them has been inconsistent. And hey, I'm not the manager, and he didn't get claimed, even though I think Buffalo maybe should have taken a stab at it. They had $17 million. The freaking goalies are Craig Anderson and some Pekko Lepidin, whatever the hell, Finnish guy that I don't even know how to pronounce his name. So yeah, I mean, you can spare the $5 million. Maybe you don't want to pay it for 3 years, but like, hell, you got Tage Thompson and everyone locked up. Let's spend some money. Let's fucking win some games. I like to see Buffalo do better. But not this week. Not this week versus the Pens. Not there. Next little news here. I thought was kind of odd to hear is Kasperi Kotkaniemi. He's a hard name to pronounce. They call him KK in Montreal. Apparently, if you follow hockey, you've probably heard about the story where Kasperi Kotkaniemi. It's hard to say, man. How he apparently signed a RFA deal with Carolina for like $6 million, whatever, and 20 or whatever. And there was a big like Twitter battle between the Canadians and the Hurricanes. Apparently, in a talk show fairly recently, he dropped the fact that he apparently ghosted Montreal. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's say like, someone texted you, you read it, and then you just don't answer it. Basically, that's what happened. The Montreal was willing to sign the same deal with Kasperi, but he just chose not to. He just didn't answer any of their, their inquiries. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. You don't really hear too much about RFAs and, like offering offer sheets in the NHL. So definitely odd that he even volunteered to drop the info. He wasn't really pressed on it. He kind of just volunteered it, which I thought was definitely an interesting move, because if you look at it now, the guy gets paid way too much money for not producing. He is currently in 25 games played. He has 5 points, 2 goals, 3 assists. Yeah. And he gets paid I said Cosberry. It's Jesperi. Sorry. He gets paid $4.82 million for the next 6 years or something like that. And this guy's really young. He's 22 years old, and he's also a left wing center kind of guy, so he can play multiple positions. And obviously, you don't want to give up on a player while they're a young guy, but signing a huge deal like that, getting only 5 points, it's a tough sell for me. And it's part of the reason why I think Carolina will definitely start to fall off here pretty soon. I don't think they're going to stay a good Metro team for that long past this year. This year, obviously, that's a different story. They're a good team. I was kind of talking them down a little bit last week when the Penguins played them. But to be fair, I'll go more into that on the review part of this. I think the Pens kind of got fucked out of that game. I'll get into that later. My last little teaser, little tidbit is the Brock Boeser. This guy, he's plays for Vancouver, and they're reportedly willing to move on from him in a trade. And I do believe he's going to be traded pretty soon. There's a few caveats. There's not many teams that can just take his salary cap. He's due for 3 more years, $6.65 million. But he doesn't have any trade clauses, so he can get moved wherever the GMs decide to go. And his GM is Jim Rutherford, and if you know as Penguin fan, he loves just making deals. And he made the greatest deal in the world of trading Ryan Reeves for a first-round pick at one point. So, yeah. And I do think he gets trade happy, and if his team isn't succeeding well, which they're not succeeding, and he calls them out in the media, and then he's willing to make trades. And I kind of didn't love Jim Rutherford towards the end of his tenure, and I'm glad he's on a different team for sure. Pretty sure he technically retired from the Penguins as well, so kind of odd to see him back. Anyway. Sorry, I was just sipping my Yinzer tea again. Brock himself, he's a goal scorer, and the Canucks, even though they're a bad team right now, they are scoring a lot of goals. They just let up a lot of goals. I think they had like 88 goals for, but like 101 goals against. So they need to work on defense. Is the obvious candidate there, obvious symptom of their issue. And with that being said, I'm sure there's plenty of teams that will trade a goal scorer for some kind of defensive player. And with the style of Vancouver's management, their ownership, I think that they're going to be a win now team. So I think they want to get a player back in this trade. I don't think they want to rebuild, because if they're going to rebuild, they would have done it already. And yeah, they're not in a rebuild, but they're an awful team, and something needs to be done there. Right now, even though he was considered to be scratched, which is usually an indication of being traded, but I think it's that they are unhappy with his play. He has, in 20 games played, 4 goals, 12 assists, 16 points, and he's a minus 14. And you hear that stat line, you're like, really? Like, this guy who's like 0.7 point whatever points per game is going to be scratched, and they're not happy with his defense, and that's why it's like, I don't really buy that. Like, I don't know if you guys listen to this, you might listen to a guy named Shannon. He does a YouTube, the hockey guy is his name on it, and he brought up a good point today when I thought was interesting is offensive players that can't play defense are kind of ripped new ones in the media and coaches and just by fans in general versus players who are defensive minded only and can't really score. And I thought that's just like an interesting like little mental like viewpoint there. Is I mean it makes sense. Like a scoring player who's not scoring obviously is costs a lot of money, and put that much resource into a guy, you want to see him scoring. The defense you'd hope, I guess, is there. But I just think that's a little unfair because, like, you really like if you are paying a guy a lot of money, to score goals, you shouldn't really care that much uh, if he's putting up 16 points in 20 games. Like to me, he's filled his end of the bargain. Maybe his defense needs to be worked on, but there's no way he's the reason that they are in the shitter right now, like 7-13. So where does he go from here? That's the next question. Obviously, I'd love to see him on the Penguins, but like I said, with how the cap works, I mean, we'd have to lose a player of some significance to get this guy in return. One thing that happened recently is one medical thing is Letang had a stroke recently, so prayers up to him, and obviously that's terrible for Letang. But with that being said, there are some implications with that. A player misses a lot of time, you can put him on LTIR. It's pretty early in the season, but it reminds me of a situation where, Tampa Bay put Kucherov on LTIR until the playoffs, and definitely that one was a little sus, and not necessarily suggesting that Letang will be out that long, but, if we happen to move him to LTIR, we definitely have $6 million from his contract alone to spend on a player that costs 6.65. I'm just saying. There could be something there. I don't necessarily think the Penguins are going to be able to add him. I think there's going to be other teams that can maybe offer a better package. Like I said, they're going to want a defensive player or, maybe a defenseman himself. I could see maybe like Zucker moving. I wouldn't want to really see him go with how good he's been playing. But we could lose like Dumo or maybe even Pedersen, but I doubt it. And it's like the only player I can really see us actually trading is Dumo. And gotta think about that. Trading Dumo and maybe like a first round, second round pick. I don't know. I heard that the offers for Brock Boeser are starting to go down, like the value of them. I was reading this earlier today. So if they're going to get meager offerings, kind of Dumo might be one of the better options if we do end up, pulling that move off. Dumo, obviously, plus some capital, or maybe Ty Smith, and I don't know. That's what I was thinking here is if you move Dumo, you definitely have the defensive depth in the organization to cover that. I don't think Dumo's irreplaceable anymore. I think Pojo's definitely proven that he should belong. Mark Friedman would be starting to play maybe, or I think Ty Smith deserves it more than him. But one of my critiques of the Pens this year were that they were definitely super deep in defense this year. Like they had like 10 defensemen on the roster that were NHL players. It was like, why do we have this many? And with that being said, we definitely have some extra defensemen laying around, and I don't know if Dumo is going to get any better, and he's on a 1-year like remaining deal, and it's about 4 point some million. I think right now, I think that could be a potential trade. That would be what I offer, obviously, plus some draft pick, because the Pens still have their first and second this year, and the next year, and the year after that. And let's be real, I'm expecting to win cups. I don't really necessarily care. I don't care at this point. Maybe 4 years from now, I'll be like, why the hell did we do this? But if you get a goal-scoring player, winger, for 3 more years, that's basically the end of everyone's contract with the core. So it lines up pretty well, and you do yourself a pretty interesting. Put yourself in a pretty interesting position, I will say. Some of the other teams, obviously I want the Pens, but some other teams I'm really thinking that might consider this, that fit, the system, what the front office might want, is like the Wild and the Jets. I think the Wild, I think they can move some of their depth forward. With that being said, their payroll and skill will increase with adding Boeser back. I think Jordan Greenway could be moved potentially. He's like a power forward type of guy who plays well, 200 feet, which kind of fits the bill. He makes $3 million for 3 years, so you could add even another player, within the confines of Boeser's contract of 6.6. So add another player for 3.6. I mean, that's a pretty good player. Another guy on their roster I saw that could be maybe a potential fit, playing into the defensive side of things, is Matt Dumba. He is an alternate captain. He has 1 year left. He's 28 years old. And I think Minnesota could potentially move him. He makes $6 million. So, I mean, fill a defensive issue, you add $6 million, or you lose $0.6 million to your cap space. I mean, I think that's a pretty decent, potential trade. I don't, obviously, I'm not a GM, so I don't really know how they value their players. I've heard that each team keeps separate stats on players. So, I mean, I don't know how they value kind of like a two-way defensive man. A two-way defensive man. That sounded weird. Two-way defenseman in Dumba, but I think he's definitely one of the better options out there who's on a 1-year deal, and they should really start rebuilding. I'm not going to lie. I really think that the Vancouver Canucks should start rebuilding. So having a guy on a 1-year deal and then he's gone, get that money out, I mean, I don't think that's a bad move for them. The other team was also another Western team that I think could potentially make a move is the Jets. I think the Jets have struggled to score this year. They're one of the lowest scoring teams, actually. They're at league average, which is like 78 goals, and that's what they're at. But they've also only let in 59 goals. I believe the stat is. It is, by the way. And like obviously they can spare some defense for some offense, and it's kind of plays into like where's the scheme fit, and it's tough. I feel like Brendan Dillon or Neil Poink could be a potential return here. Poink is kind of like a two-way offensive minded guy, so maybe not. But Brendan Dillon, he is like a big guy, hard body. He was on the Capitals at one point, if you remember, any Penguin fan. But before he was on the Sharks as well, so you might remember him from that. But he's a big guy. He can contribute offensively, like maybe 20 points a season, but nothing spectacular. But he's definitely a defensive guy that, if you need to add defense and you're willing to trade a scorer for it, might as well be that guy. Or a guy who doesn't make the full 6.6 million. Brendan Dillon only makes 3.9 million for this year and the next. So once again, you'll have that space to add another player, or who knows? I mean, at cap space, maybe you get another pick out of it. It's like cap space is at such a premium right now. I feel like you have to really capitalize while you can. Apparently, the next 2 years, the cap space is supposed to like really kick up. So if I'm a GM, I'm going to capitalize while the market is there for cap space. In my opinion, I feel like that's really a good idea, good move. But once again, I'm not an NHL GM, so I don't really know how this stuff works. At least like to believe I do. That's right. I'm not really sure when this is going to happen though, this trade. The insiders really kind of like Elliot Friedman, like kind of really think this is going to happen sooner than later. And I'd be really sad if, Boston or another one of those top teams, Vegas, ended up making a move for this, because those teams are already really good. It'd be shitty if we have to, play an even better team in the playoffs if we play them. Moving on now to the Penguins. I'm gonna recap the 3 games that they played. First off, this is the OT loss versus the Canes, where Brian Rust got boarded right in front of the player benches, and all of the Penguin players stopped playing, and the Canes jumped on the ice. 4 guys were on the ice at one point, and they scored on a 2-0, and Jari didn't stand a chance. Let's be real. Everyone stopped there. It was an obvious call that was not called. I think this is going to be, fuel the Penguins for the next time they play the Canes. We play them 3 more times this year, and I do think it would add some fire to them. Brian Russ is actually quoted after he was interviewed after this game, because he was the one that was hit. He said the whole play was fairly bizarre. The whole game was bizarre, and some things weren't called. And that's as much as you'll get from a hockey player saying that, yeah, there was a missed call, and it should have been called, basically. In this game, I noticed that the power play was still kind of an issue. It just seemed like there wasn't much movement off the puck. I think Raquel should definitely been moved up earlier. He actually is on the first line power play right now, but I think he should have been earlier, maybe like 3 or 4 games ago, because Brian Rust has been cold, to say the least. But yeah, we lost in overtime to them. I'm excited to play them again. I think the Penguins will beat them next time for sure. The Penguins actually played Vegas, one of the best teams in the NHL right now, and they beat them 4-3 at home. The Penguins spotted them a 2-goal lead after the first period, but there was just something that clicked in that room, and Brock McGinn scored another clutch goal, 7th goal of the year, and Rickard Rakell definitely scored again. He didn't. Let me rephrase that better. Rickard Rakell scored again in the second period to tie it. And I feel like Rickard Rakell just hasn't been talked about by this podcast enough. He has 10 goals, 5 assists through 25 games, and he really drives the offense with the Penguins, with Malkin, with Sid. It's good to see him finally get some power play time. It's well deserved, and I think he actually had a power play goal in that game versus the Knights. He's definitely been one of the more consistent players, whereas Kasperi Kapanen and Danton Heinen and the other guys we like to hit on here have not been. I think Rickard Rakell has good chemistry with our top players, and when we got him from the Ducks, I wasn't really sure how good this guy was, but right now I feel like that trade is a definite win in the Penguins' favor. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to pull up the trade details real quick. The Penguins traded, Simone, Aston Reese, and Callie Klang, which I don't know who that is, and a second-round pick for Rickard Rakell, and they retained some of the salary. So I think, without a doubt, a definite win. Aston Reese is not even on. I think he's on the Leafs now, and Dominic Simone has been I always thought he was a bum. I think he's right now is an AHL player. To show you, he was never very good. Sullivan loved him for some reason. He was on the team like multiple times. I just didn't really understand why. He never really looked very good. But yeah, I think Rickard Rakell is definite good player. Glad we have him. Part of the reason why our offense is so good. An interesting part of that game, the Vegas game, and the last person I thought would scored is Kasperi Kapanen, Cheeks Kapanen, as the Penguins call him. He scored a goal that was both huge for him and the Penguins. If you saw the broadcast, or maybe if you were even there, you could see the emotion on his face. It was just raw emotion of like, I got the monkey off my back. I finally scored a goal. I can, breathe a sigh of relief. And everyone, all of his teammates were very happy for him. You could see when they hugged him on the ice, Jeff Carter was smiling, cheering for him, and definitely, I think it goes to show the character that Kapanen has. Despite his off or on the ice inconsistencies, he's still a good person and well liked within the organization. And I think that kind of speaks volumes for just the leadership there, and maybe Kasperi Kapanen's dedication to hockey. I mean, maybe he just had a bad streak. I mean, if he's putting in the effort, putting in the time, and just, you don't. Sometimes when you play hockey, it just doesn't work for you. But I was hoping when I reviewed this game that this would be the start of something good for him, and I think the next game proved that it was. The last game of the week was versus the St. Louis Blues. The Pens absolutely crushed them, 6-2. I predicted a 5-2 game, by the way, and I also predicted that Binnington would get ran out of the net by the Pens after we scored a lot on them, and it happened. I think the last 2 times we played the St. Louis Blues, this happened, and what's his face? Zucker scored the 4th goal in the second period, and by that time Binnington just looked awful. Like, there was a play where he went trying to reach in the trapezoid area where you can't reach behind the net, and the Penguins just made him pay. They stole it right off him and scored, and he was just spinning around, not really there mentally. And it's kind of funny because I mentioned, Zucker scored that 4th goal. Binnington got pulled after that, and he was chatting it up on the way to the bench, and Zucker just shrugged at him like, well, what did I do? I just scored on you, and you're the one with your, brain malfunction right now. And the Coach Berube is the St. Louis Blues coach. He actually blasted him, saying it's got to stop. It doesn't help anything. Which, once again, if you know hockey, they don't say very much, but saying anything about the antics and, a negative kind of perspective on that, I think speaks a lot. And I think he's absolutely true. There was a misconduct given to Binnington for his actions for trying to incite a fight. I thought it was definitely an interesting call. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. Maybe some of the older hockey fans who watched through the 90s might have seen something like that before, but I don't think I've ever seen that before. And while, the Blues were melting down, the Penguins, I thought, were building a strong case for, the type of team that they are. Kasperi Kapanen, after 5-6 games being scratched, comes back, scores a goal in his first game, and then he scores 3 goals in this game versus the Blues. All of them were, maybe not all of them, maybe 2 out of the 3. Actually, no, I think all 3 were in that blue paint area on the power play. Some of them were on the power play. So, kind of, once again, one of the things I was saying for Kapanen is, to get him started, this was episode 2. You can go back and listen to this. I think he should be on the power play. I think having him on the penalty kills are right because of his speed and everything, but he's a skilled guy, and sometimes when you're on a bad streak and you need a point, being on the power play and just sitting in front of the net cleaning up garbage, kind of a good thing. Go score a goal. Who knows, the streak that he could go on, or how much better he feels about himself and the psychology behind it. So I definitely was glad to see him succeed, and I just, we could start the year. I don't think he was used properly. We had Polian or Paling. Yeah, we had Paling and Heinen on the power play, and Heinen's getting scratched now. Or I think he was last game, and then Paling got hurt the other game. But those guys were actual 4th-line players, 3rd-line players, where I feel like Kasperi is definitely that middle 6 kind of player. When he's on, obviously. Cappy, he now has 5 goals, 5 assists, and 16 games played, so that's not really that bad if you consider his season so far. If he builds on it, I'd be definitely happy to see. And getting on to the previews for this week. The Penguins tonight, in literally starting now, so I'm going to throw it on. This is perfect because now I can tell you how I'm not watching the game totally and just telling you what happens. Anyways, to preview this first game tonight, last game of this little homestand that we've had, we play the Columbus Blue Jackets. Jackets are 8-13-2 with 18 points. They've gone 1-3-1 in their last 5 games. They beat Winnipeg 4-1 on December 2nd. Their season has been, marred by injury and just underperformance by their top players, besides Johnny Gaudreau. He's obviously the biggest threat. Him and Boone Jenner, they always seem to have good games. Boone Jenner always seems to have good games against the Pens. Same with Gustav Nyquist. He always seems to get on the score sheet somehow, and I would really love to see Jari shut them out. I'll say it now. I think they're going to win a 4-0 game. Elvis Merzlikins is in net, and he's really been struggling this year. I really do expect the Pens to blow out this team. I think that the Blue Jackets are bottom 3 teams in this league. They are not good. Having the injuries on top of, a lack of skill, depth, and veterans is just, the cream of the cake, or whatever that fucking saying is they just really are struggling for talent in Columbus, and the Penguins are on the up. I think the Penguins have found the game that they want to play, and I think they'll play it and dictate the game tonight. It's kind of sad. I was going to go to the game with my sister tonight, but it just didn't work out. We have some pretty nice tickets on the lower floor or lower bowl. Definitely kind of wish I was there, but at the same time, I wouldn't have been able to do the pod, and I love doing the pod. I love just talking to you guys here. But yeah, Penguins 4-0. I expected the Penguins' depth to continue contributing. I would love to see Kapanen score a goal here. I'd also like to see Malkin kind of dominate a game. I feel like it's been a few games since I've really seen him, playing that 200-foot game that he was earlier. So I definitely like to see that. Moving on, the Penguins play the Buffalo Sabres twice, so I kind of get to cheap out here on the preview. They play them at the Sabres and then back here in Pittsburgh, so a home and home stand, which is kind of cool. I actually think kind of like during the COVID era of hockey, they did this where they played teams a bunch in a row, and I actually kind of like the mini series. I don't know what it was, but I feel like it actually made rivalries in the NHL. You see the same guy so much, you want to just hit him. Like, damn, that guy ran my player last game. Got to get even with him, type of shit. But yeah, the Penguins play them twice. I'm just going to preview the away game because I feel like everything I say here applies, but just a little bit differently being at home or away. I think the Sabres are one of the most lethal teams offensively this year. And I think they can back it up. Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, and Jeff Skinner's are all at least a point per game. I think Jeff Skinner's or Tuch is 1 point under a point per game. So they are clicking, and Dylan Cousins has been stepping forward. I think he has 8 points last week, and the Penguins really need to slow them down and really defend well if they want to beat this team. I think the key to victory there would be counterpunching or counterattacking, on the rush, and really kind of exploiting maybe the fact that they're not really veterans on that team. A lot of their best players are young, and I think frustrating them would be a great way to counter attack and score on those rushes and odd man rush opportunities. I think the first game will be a high scoring game. I think Buffalo being at home, you kind of get the matchups that you want. I think it'll be a 5-4 win for the Pens. I'm expecting Smith to start there and Casey to be at home. So kind of expect a little bit of a higher scoring game there. I expect, though, that game in Pittsburgh, so the home game, the second game, I expect a 3-1 win from the Pens. Same thing that I said, they need to slow them down, but they can get the matchups they want being home. So the way hockey works, if you're not familiar, you change lines, forward defensive lines. When the whistle stops, the home team gets the last say in the changes. So if you ever see at a game, the ref will stand between the two benches, motion both teams, to make their subs. So I think Sullivan is I think he's a master at strategy, and I think he knows how to deploy his units well, his team well, and I do think that they're going to win a 3-1 game. The Buffalo Sabres are 11, 13, and 1. That's 23 points right now. And the last game of this week is the Dallas Stars, who one of the best teams in the league. They're 14, 6, and 5. Real tough team here. Maybe another if Buffalo Sabres aren't the best team, just based off stats, goals for, then Dallas definitely is. They have the most goals scored, and I mentioned I mentioned Jason Robertson earlier. His offensive numbers are absolutely insane, and I don't know how we can expect to slow down a player that's playing that well. But they also have Roope Hintz, Joe Pavelski, Jamie Benn, all making a pretty big impact for the Stars. Someone who isn't playing well but might against the Pens is Tyler Seguin. He's been that guy before, but kind of not really been the same guy since his hip injuries. So, this game, I feel like it's going to be a tough one for the Pens. I think their goaltending is something we could exploit. I don't think they have the best, pair in Wedgwood and Ottinger. But Ottinger at one point in the season was doing pretty hot. If he could do it again, I think it could be a bad night for the Penguins. And while I don't necessarily like predicting losses for the Penguins, I kind of am looking at the facts here, and I think they're going to lose this game to the Stars 3-2, which will be tough to watch. But I do predict that it's going to be a good game. I mean, how is playing like some of the best teams in the West? Like, you want this challenge as a player, I think, and the Penguins rose against the Knights, and I think they could do it again here. I could argue that the Knights are a better team. And hey, I also predicted that game 3-2 win for the Pens, but I was close. I'm getting close here. One of these weeks I'll be right, and then I'll celebrate it. But yeah, the Stars 3-2 loss, I think, for the Pens. Might be a tough one to swallow. Might even be in overtime. But I do think it's going to be close. And moving on here, that's all the Penguin games for this week. Kind of want to highlight some of the players in other news about the Penguins here. Jeff Petry, he is now going to be the quarterback and the number one defenseman on the Penguins. How is he going to fill this role of Chris Letang? The power play actually was doing better since we were slumping in the beginning and the start of the season. Jeff Petry contributed on a power play assist versus Vegas. Excuse me. I think he can rise there. I don't necessarily think he's been the best Penguin defenseman. I think that's Marcus Pettersson. But I do think he's probably been the second best. It's tough for me to argue anyone else. I mean, obviously Letang, but he's hurt, so he's had that stroke. So he's not really a factor in my considerations right now. I'd like to see Pettersson next to him. I think Petey and him are doing well together. I want them to build chemistry because with the stroke, I mean, the Penguins tweeted out a video of Letang skating and shooting, but who really knows how long he's going to be out for? And for his sake, I really hope he doesn't rush back into it because who really knows, like, the kind of harm that you could do to your body. He had a stroke in 2014, and he was only 26. So fast forward 8 more years, 34. I mean, it's older. I mean, you're not really old, but like, it's scarier. I think he has kids now and a wife, so I really don't want to see him rush into it and hurt himself long term. I love Letang. I think he's given his heart, soul, and body to this team, to this city, and if he wanted to, hang it up even, I'd be fine with that. Obviously, I hope that he gets better and can play hockey again, but, I respect him either way, for sure. Back on to the Petry, though, his stats this year, 25 games played, 3 goals, 8 assists, 49 blocks, 78 hits. Look at his stat line. I mean, he's not Cale Makar, and I don't think he needs to be that guy. I think he needs to be the two-way guy that he is with Letang missing who knows how amount of time. I think he could contribute more offensively, actually. I'd like to see him maybe even get to his career best. Right now, he's on pace with like his 40-ish point season. But those the teams that he set those 40-ish point seasons were with Montreal and pre-McDavid Oilers. I think he could do better. His best season offensively was that shortened one, which was 2 years ago. He had 42 points and 12 goals in 55 games. So if he reaches even near that, that's 60 points. I mean, shit, I'll take that, like, for sure. And then you get that guy playing that well, and then Letang returns. I mean, shit, that's tough right there. That's a lethal two-way lineup for the Pens. And I kind of feel like this guy might be more obvious, but Kasperi Kapanen, I like to definitely pump his tires while he's been doing well. Like I said, 4 goals in the last 2 games, more time on the power play. He's being given the keys to success, which I kind of alluded to this earlier in the pod here, but I think coaching maybe what might have been a reason that, Kapanen was not off to a better start this season. Getting that chance on the power play, you really get a chance at an easy point in confidence. Like, I'm not an NHL player, but, just you see like 50 games without a goal or whatever it was, regular season games without a point. You need to boost the guy's confidence. And yeah, it's not like you didn't have other, guys struggling like Rust and Heinen. And, it's like, give the guy an opportunity to succeed. I think he now is going to have that confidence to get himself on the right path, and I really hope that he scores tonight, honestly. The game actually hasn't started yet. Kind of annoying. But yeah, I think Cappy will definitely have a good chance to score this week with, the weak defenses that they're playing 3 times, being Jackets and the Sabres twice. So one of the easier weeks to return, I'd say, in terms of scoring, for sure. And then the last guy that I think, player to watch, and obviously is Sidney Crosby. I think he's been the MVP this year, without a doubt. He's riding a 5-game point streak, 6 points in that streak, 17 points in his last 10 games played as well. He's been on a tear, and I feel like it's a shame that, they mentioned Jason Robertson and, Marner and Connor McDavid, and like, yes, these guys are some of the best, if not the best, offensive players in the NHL, but Sidney Crosby is actually leading the league in even strength points with 12 goals, 16 assists, and also leading the Pens with 13 goals, 20 assists, 33 points in his 25 games played. I mean, like, you look at the underlying numbers and seeing that the Penguins' power play struggled, this guy could have been at 40 points. That's only another 7 points. Oh, shit. The Penguin game did start, and they're already down 1-0. My stream just jumped to it. What the fuck? What the actual fuck? Well, that's not a great start. Let's see. Who scored? Oh, Johnny Gaudreau, the one fucking player that's an actual threat. And Line got the assist. Great. Well, that's a big kick in the dick right there. I didn't like to see that. I'd like to see Sid, get multiple points every game this week. I think he could do it. I think, like I said with Kapanen, that this week is a pretty weak schedule in terms of defense. So definitely a good chance here. Other Penguin stats and news. I mentioned earlier, Letang has his second stroke. Last time he was out 2 months. I hope he takes his time. But moving on from kind of sad story, and I don't really think it's necessarily a right thing to do to keep focusing on his health. But the Penguins were the number 1 PK in November. I think they killed every single power play that they faced. They have been one of the best units since Teddy Bluger has returned, and they're up to 80.52% on the PK, which is above the league average. But special teams, the PK, solved itself. The power play definitely needs to get their shit together here. Another stat for the Pens, their expected goals for is currently 58.5, which is top of the league, maybe top 3 if I'm not sure if the stats changed since I last looked, which was yesterday, but it's a reflection of a few things. If you've never heard expected goals for, it pulls a bunch of stats into a clean number, clean percentage number to reflect, goal scoring and puck luck, basically. Goal scoring from certain areas as well. Um, Expected goal scores tallies shots in their locations while players are on the ice, and it's based off where shots are coming from compared to the league-wide shooting average for that said location. So you shoot right in front of the net, it's probably a pretty high percent chance. You get more shots saved when you're in that inside area. That blue paint area, your expected goals for is going to go down. So that's kind of how it works, and it's interesting that it kind of just means the Penguins are either lucky right now, or with the puck in general, or just getting into good spots and putting pucks in net. And I really do think that is what it is. I think that's a good good stat. Penguins are converting their chances that they get, which is kind of the mark of a good team. Difference between first and second place, or going to the next game or series, could be like a goal. So got to convert on those chances. And moving on here to my more depressing part of this pod is the Panthers Den here. The Florida Panthers. I didn't even want to talk about them last week because they're doing so shit. And while there's a little bit, they're riding a 2-game winning streak, there's a little bit more to cheer for. They've only gone 4-3-3 in their last 10. They continue to lose their talent to injuries. Hornquist, who was having a bad season, yes, but still a good player regardless, or at least formerly a good player. He was placed on IR on December 4th, so he's out. Who knows? Probably a month, maybe 2. I don't know. Definitely have been following the Penguins closer, not just because I'm from Pittsburgh, but also because this team has not been fun to watch, the Florida Panthers. Anton Lundell was also injured, didn't play in their last game. My buddy Pat told me today he has Brandon Montour on his team. He went down last game. The Panthers actually played, because of salary cap restraints, with less than 20 players on their benches, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. The salary cap, they're so against it, and they're not even this great team. They're so against it, they can't even put a whole team on the ice, and that's just weird to me. That's kind of sad. I definitely blame the goaltending still. $15 million tied up there is a shitload of money in the NHL. And I wouldn't necessarily press the panic button, though. These injuries could be, I don't want to say a blessing in disguise, but, it could shake up the roster. I don't know how injured these guys are, so all this is somewhat conjecture. But they need to have some more consistency to compete in the Atlantic Division, and maybe they can add a player, or maybe they move something around, or maybe they get some pipeline guys in. But panic button, not yet, but pretty damn close. They managed to beat the Canucks and the Kraken 5-1. Both those games, the power play was really clicking during the Kraken game, 3 out of 4. I think looking at this week at a glance, it might create some anxiety for the Panthers. They play Winnipeg, Detroit, Tampa Bay, and the Kraken again. And instead of doing all these games like I do for the Pens, I'm just going to review these 2 games versus Detroit and Lightning, since those 3 teams, Panthers, Detroit, and Lightning, they're all 3, 4, and 5 in the Atlantic Division. Lightning being 3, Detroit being 4, Panthers being 5. Panthers have 28 points. Detroit has 29. Lightning has 31. So they're all within each other pretty closely. They're 1 point ahead. Detroit, they play them first. I think they're a young team, has some pretty good talent. definite flaws in their roster makeup right now. I think they defend well. Husso is playing well. 9.12 save percentage, 2.58 goals against. I think Detroit just struggles with their scoring, like a lot of teams in the NHL. I think it's just inconsistent. They only have 2 players at a point per game, Larkin and Kubalik. I think, if the Panthers goaltending can stand the test, I think they'll win a close game 3-2 versus Detroit. Moving on to the Lightning, who were definitely the bigger threat here. Panthers and Lightning have been a rivalry since I was in Florida, which I went to Florida for college, and I spent 6 years there. And I kind of remember when I first got there in 2014, 2015, that the Panthers were kind of not very great. They're getting good for sure, but they weren't great. But towards the end of that rivalry, kind of cross-state rivalry, even in Florida, you'd think that really didn't exist, but it did. I mean, I went to both Tampa and Panther games, and they're always entertaining when they played each other. I think this game's gonna be exciting. I think it's gonna be Matthew Tkachuk show. I'd like to see him really start, starting some shit for the Panthers. Really kind of get into the head of Cooch and those guys. And Jesus Christ, the Pens just did a penalty. We might fucking lose. But the Battle of Florida has definitely gotten exciting. I'd like to see Tkachuk really, kind of take it over. I think he definitely can. And the Lightning, though, it's going to be tough. They're ranked both 12th in goals for and goals against, so they defend and score in that the top third of the league, and they're healthy. And despite losing a few pieces in the offseason, I think this team's pretty damn good. I think the issue, or one of the main issues in the start of the season, was Vasilevsky's inconsistency. He kind of wasn't playing very well, but now he's playing well. In the Lightning, recently, or his recent only bad recent game, Vasilevsky's only bad game recently, is the against the Bruins, which kind of, no surprise there. And that game, the Lightning themselves, I actually watched this game. They didn't really look very good. It's a 5-3 loss that they had, so usually when that many goals are put up, it's not all on the goalie. I think in this Panthers-Lightning game, I think it's going to be emotional. I think it's kind of like Flyers-Pens. Players hate each other. They've been playing each other for a while. Hopefully Barkov's back, but I think it's going to be a higher scoring game, and I'm not sure who's going to win it. I want to say Tampa, based off of just they're better right now, playing better. But I think the Panthers can win a 4-2 game. I do think, and it might not be higher scoring, but I think for Panthers, this is going to be a true test. 4-2 game. Let's see it happen. And yeah, those are the 2 games I wanted to review. As much as I like the Panthers, I do have some doubts. They're not the same team they were last year. The team that was putting up, this insane amount of offense. Huberdeau was one of the reasons. Nothing against Tkachuk, but Huberdeau was putting up 100 points. Barkov was pretty damn close to that, if not hitting that. I think they're also defending better. I think the front office is really letting down these players. I think signing a goalie to that deal, Bobrovsky's deal, lets down the players. Signing a backup to a $4.5 million deal, what are you doing? I think they also kind of missed on that Giroux trade. So I feel like this front office is just overpaying for players, and these poor trades really brought down the Panthers from the success they had last year. And that's not even mentioning the coaching issue that I have with this team. But I feel like they're just in this weird limbo position. And if they do try to add, say they add Brock Boeser, where will that put them? Are they even going to have a chance if they do this? I mean, I'm obviously speculating a little bit here, but I feel like if this season goes poorly, I would want the front office to really get rid of one of these terrible contracts. Bobrovsky, Spencer Knight. Just, oh shit, something's going on in the Pens game. Some fighting, some pushing, but yeah, I definitely want one of these terrible contracts to get moved on from. I know they'll get some relief with Hornquist his contract being up, but definitely would welcome that. And as always, here I would like to end the show with doing my power rankings here. Let me just pull it up. Didn't really change much this week, I will say, but it did change. Here we are. I think that's Sharon. Let's see. Yep. Let me make this as big as possible for you folks. Woo. All right. In the elite bracket, I mean, these teams have not changed in a while. Boston Bruins, number 1. Vegas Golden Knights, number 2. Devils, number 3. Leafs, 4. I feel like you definitely could interchange these. You could argue either way, but this is how I view it. Vegas recently just beat the Bruins. They're up 3-0. Bruins came back 3-3. Vegas wins it in a shootout. So I feel like that's good. These teams are even, and we know how good Boston is. So I feel like that really was a measuring, stick or tape measuring or stick measuring, whatever, for Vegas of how good they actually are. The other next bracket here, playoffs. I was definitely down on the Hurricanes, but I have them in my number 1 slot in the playoffs. I think they're playing at an elite level of just not laying a lot of goals in, and it's tough to beat a team that you can't score it on. Next, Stars. I mean, I mentioned it. I think they're lethal. Next is the Islanders. I feel like they follow the same pattern of not laying a lot of scoring in. Tough team to beat when you can't score on them. Kraken. I feel like Kraken are a different story. They're getting that elite goaltending that they needed to really make themselves stand out in this league. They're still, I feel like, second best in the Pacific until, they start getting on a hefty losing streak or maybe lose a player to injury or something like that. Barring that, I feel like they're going to be in playoffs this year. Might even bet some money on it, not going to lie. Next team I have, Penguins here. Feel like talk them to death. Understandable. I think they're a playoff team. I think they found their game. Same thing with the Jets. I think they found their game, which is not letting a lot of goals up as well. Lightning, same thing. I think the major shock here is the Avalanche, who I have in the fringe of, not the fringe, because that's the next tier. The last spot in playoffs. They are super injured. I think McKinnon just went down last night, and they are super injured. Like, Erod's gone, and I could pull up a bunch of other players, but no need to go too in depth with it. This team injured. That is why they are this far down. Not because they suck, because, well, the team they fielding right now does suck. They're AHL quality players. Not exactly what you win cups with. Moving on to the fringe, I got LA, who've been slipping. The inconsistency, I can't push them in the playoffs. Oilers, same thing. Tough look for the Oilers. I feel like they're so mediocre. Detroit, I feel like I could have put them in the playoffs, but I don't think they're that good of a team. I don't think they've at least shown me that they're that good of a team. Same thing with the Panthers here next. So inconsistent. It's decent record. Like, these records aren't bad, but they're in the NHL. If you're 12-9-4, it's like, yeah, you look like you're above 500, but like you've won 12 games and lost 13, so you're still kind of that fringe play, or in that fringe zone. Oh, I'm gonna patent that, fringe zone. Fringe in general. NHL 500 is really weird. Doesn't really make any sense. You have to be like actually below 500 with how the point system works, to be honest. dropped my pen and now I'm trying to find it. Moving on, the Wild. I feel like the Wild have actually been playing better of recently. I'd like to see them add at the deadline. I think they have a few $1 million here for adding players, so watch out. I mean, we'll see how well they play these next few games. Rangers, I've talked about them last week. I feel like this team is kind of searching. They're not elite scoring. They're not elite defending. They don't have that kind of players on their team. They're kind of relying on Shesterkin to really pull their team together. Not a recipe for success, if you ask me. Calgary, one of the teams definitely started surging up. Same thing with the Predators. These teams have been playing kind of shit. I think these teams are these fringe players. I think they're going to be competing for that wild card spot if they don't get in higher in their divisions. Montreal, they lost a game. They were winning 4-0. They lose 7-6. I almost put them in bad for that. Not gonna lie. Moving on to the bad tier, Sabres, inconsistent. Bad plays ruined their good start. They kind of dug themselves in the hole. They're under 500. Senators, I think their talent there. I think they should be playing better. I think goaltending and defenses is bad there. Capitals really injured. Also just sucking. Nothing. These bad teams, I really don't. Not really watching them that much. Flyers, same thing, just playing bad. Moving on. St. Louis, ugh, gross. I've been down on St. Louis. They're 11-13 right now. They're just not playing good hockey. They need to do something, make a change maybe. I don't know. Vancouver and then the Sharks, kind of just these teams that are floating there in limbo. Vancouver really, really needs to do something if they're not rebuilding, and they need to make a move. Moving on, Bedard, same teams as last week. Doesn't even really matter the fucking order. These teams are all going to get a shot at drafting him with how the lottery works. Chicago, Blue Jackets, Coyotes, Ducks. Ducks have just, their uniforms look awful and they're awful on the ice, so it's just bunch of garbage. And that does it for episode 7 of Puckin Dirty here. I appreciate if you've stayed this long. Did a little bit more talking about Dungeons and Dragons and some of my other hobbies. I definitely want to include these cards that I've been collecting, wherever they are, into the pod here. I'm trying to think of clever ways. I think rolling for it's a good way, but another thing I was considering is opening packs live. And while that might be obnoxiously loud, it could spur some interesting conversations with potential future guests. And speaking of future guests, my buddy Joey Robertson, I actually went to his wedding this year. It was a good time. I'm glad for the invite. Glad to see my buddies again. I'm expecting to interview him within these next few weeks. I'm going to be in Florida from the 17th to the 22nd, so maybe I do an in-person one. We'll see. I think that'd be fun. Maybe it's more of like an interview style, and I kind of plug it in with the pod. But we'll see. And I posted this on my social media, the Instagram. And if you're a person who listens to this, and you have any questions or you want to talk on the pod, whatever, just let me know. I'll make it work. We'll organize something. I think hockey is a fun sport to talk about, and there's a lot of opinions out there. And while I don't think that I have all the right ones, I definitely like reacting and reflecting with how other people view things. So just let me know. Yeah, and that was episode 7 of Puckin Dirty. My name is David Ajoya, and once again, thanks for listening. I'll see you again next week.